Okay. All right. So welcome back. We are now with Faye Kennedy. She is our community Girat. That's how you say it, right? Girat?
Piper.
Gerard.
You know, the African person that goes around with the information.
Wow, man, why you gonna pick a...
Griot. Yeah, there you go, Griot. I said Griot.
You got me totally
Griot. Okay.
yes.
Pigeon.
All right, so
She is our community griot.
Griot, yes.
There we go.
So yes, she has a publication called the African
Drum.
the talking
Talking
about the
Drum.
African drum, the talking drum. So if you want more information, you can search for that on Facebook. They have a Facebook page called the Talking Drum, and you can go in there. Is conscious information that goes down in Sacramento, and check that out. And it's very cool. So, what's going on? Well, why are you here today?
Okay,
Ms.
well,
Faye?
today, first of all, thank you very much for having me here. Thank you. And the speaker, Larry Lee, he was wonderful.
Wasn't that was
it
a
was
great
really good.
interview?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, it was really.
I had a couple of questions. I wanted to run over to the microphone and say, it was good though. It was good. You guys had
we
it
do a
all
good
handled.
job?
Yeah. Oh, y'all, man.
Okay.
Good, good. Okay.
We answered. So tell us, Faye, come on.
So today I'm here to talk about one event in particular that's happening in the community, but I have a few others I'm going to mention hopefully before I leave. I'm part of a group called Sisters Quilting Collective, and we're having a quilt show coming up next weekend.
All right.
And it's going to be a 3-day event, and it's going to be held right here in the hood, right here in Oak Park.
All right, all right.
For the past 3 years, we've held it at the Brick House Art Gallery. We outgrew the Brick House Art Gallery, so
you're getting
now
big.
we're getting big.
All right.
And now we're going to be at the Oak Park Community Center, which is not far from here on Martin Luther King Boulevard. We're going to have over 60 quilts by local and regional quilters, as well as wearable art.
Wow.
And we're going to kick off the event with a opening reception trunk show, and we're featuring Connie Horn. Connie Horn is a wonderful fiber artist. She designs beautiful wearable art and outstanding and magnificent quilts. So she's going to kick us off on Friday evening at 5:30 at the Oak Park Community Center.
Oh, that's going to be great. Now,
So is there a fee?
There is a fee for the 2-day Saturday, March 19th and March 20th. It's $7 to go to the quilt show. The opening reception, if you're a member of the Sisters Quilting Collective, it is $15. If you're the general public, it's $20 to attend the opening reception / trunk show.
Oh, that should be great. Now, the Oak Park Community Center is a great facility.
Yes.
And it would be real nice if it's used more.
Yes.
I don't, there are a lot of things that are happening over there, but we don't get as much.
Right.
And this is perfect.
It's wonderful. They're Tinkle Peak that we selected them. Actually, it's going to be in the new part of the Oak Park Community Center, the new event center. It's a huge facility. So
Where's
that's
this
one of
place
the
at?
Oh, really? They had construction there?
Where's
I want to say it's on Martin Luther King and let me not get it wrong.
The address is 3425 Martin Luther King Boulevard.
Right.
It's across the street from Flowers Fish Market.
Fish Market, yeah.
And the new event center is adjacent to it. It's literally next door to Playmate Head Start.
Okay,
The event
okay, I
center.
know exactly what you're talking about, yes.
Some people may be familiar with it as the
Wasn't it?
gymnasium.
It was the gymnasium.
Right, but you can have events there. People have I've gone to weddings there, baby showers there. So we're going to have our quilt show there and everything. We're going to miss the Brick House. It was small, it was intimate, it was beautiful. We didn't have to spend a lot of work decorating because the ambiance at the Brick House. But
already
now
set. Yeah.
we're in a big
You have to
space.
create it. You have to
we have to
create the
create
space.
it. So the quilts will do most of the work for us.
Okay.
But we're going to add a little touch to it. We're going to have book displays. We're going to have children activities because we would like quilting to continue with the next generation. We're going to have my teapot display there. So it's going to be an exciting place where people can learn and connect with quilters. Like I said, most of the quilters are local. We do have some regional quilters coming in from the Bay Area and everything. Actually, this is the first year we won't have quilters from out of state or international quilters. In the past, we've had people exhibit their quilts, send their quilts from other countries and other states. We're
So-
local and regional this year.
Is there Okay, you have this event annually, but is there a place or places where people can go and learn to quilt when the season is not actually happening?
Sure. Some of our quilters do have classes. We literally just finishing up 2 exhibits. We had quilts down at the Crocker Art Gallery for Black History Month. We had a quilt show at Sacramento City College. We literally are taking it down, breaking it down now. So there's information. People come, they can visit our blog. You just type in Sisters Quilting Collective. We have a Facebook page, and we can try to connect you with some classes in area. Our featured artist, she teaches classes in Elk Grove through a sewing establishment called Country Sew, so we can hook people up that way.
So do you have guys that come and get involved?
Oh yes, the most we have men are involved. Not a lot. Matter of fact, on
I was
a
in one
national
of your quilt shows one year.
Yes,
the first
you're
year.
right. You're right. The most famous quilter nationally is Ronald Freeman. He, matter of fact, when I did the presentation today at Sacramento City College, some of the guys who were in the room kind of perked up, and I tell them that quilting is not just for women. It's open to anyone who would like to learn and keep the tradition going. So that's why the group was formed, to keep the tradition alive within the African American community. Our membership is open to everyone. Most of our members are people of African descent. We have people who are not of African descent that enjoy quilting and enjoy the fellowship with us and everything. So we want the public to come on down on Saturday, March 19th at the Oak Park Community Center from 10 to 5, and then come back on Sunday, March 20th from 10 to 4. And then we'll start planning for next year and everything.
Okay. Awesome.
And you got to know this is probably one of the most colorful events that you're going to see. Soft art, I call it soft art. I think it's amazing what you can see people do with a piece of fabric and a sewing machine or hand doing. You know, my mother had quilts that my grandmother had, and she had quilts that her mother had.
Right.
And so it's a way, like we talk about documentation. It's another way to document.
Right.
Okay, most quilts that you see have a story embedded inside of them. So those that are interested in seeing things that are art, but in a different way, a quilt show is another way to get it going.
Also, too, I think it's a nice way to create heirlooms.
Oh yeah,
For
yes.
our-
Pass it down.
Yes.
You know, something to pass down,
Right.
because a lot of times we don't have anything to give
To the next generation.
to the next generation,
Right.
and you know, I think that it's cultural capital.
Right.
So you're like, okay,
Right.
I might not have a lot of money, but I have this quilt that my mama gave me.
Now, there's also a history behind the quilts with African Americans.
Correct.
Yeah.
During slavery.
Yeah, 'cause
Do you
they
want to give
have-
a short history
Sure.
on that real quick?
Sure. So I'm going to give an example of one of the quilts that's on display right now. It's a replica of an historical quilt called the Bible quilt, and it was created by Harriet Powers. She's probably the most famous African American quilter there is, and in her day, most African American quilts told stories, and her story told the story of creation, and that's why it's called the Bible quilt. It's wonderful, and you have to remember in those days, in the 1800s, what was going on with us. Most of us were enslaved. Most of us didn't have a lot of money, so our quilt looked a little different from other quilts because we didn't have access to the resources like scissors, like rulers, and different things like that.
Today they somewhat call it folk art.
Yes, folk art.
It was considered folk art.
Folk art. But our quilts were beautiful, and that's how the women earned money to help support their families. And oftentimes those quilts were handed down from person to person, from family, from one generation to the next. And so I would say in the late 90s, early 2000, many people began to hear about Gee's Bend, the women of Gee's Bend, the quilters of Gee's Bend. They were a group of women from rural Alabama. I'm from Alabama. And they lived very isolated lives. They were not very sophisticated, but they were wonderful quilters. And they actually quilted quilts to use to keep their families warm. They actually gave their quilts to their family member when there was a new birth, when there was a wedding. they created warmth and love through their quilts and everything. So they were really brought into mainstream society. And so prior to that, you didn't see a lot of African Americans quilting, and we did not get the attention until that happened and everything. So there's a lot of history about that. And so you can look at quilts now, and you can almost date quilts based on the stitching. So in my mother's generation, my mother was a quilter. In her generation, women didn't have really sophisticated, particularly African American women, didn't have really sophisticated sewing machines, or they used what we call hand piecing to sew, and the stitches tend to be larger. Now with technology, when we were talking about technology, people buy really sophisticated sewing machines, and they like long arm sewing machines. You actually can program the computer to do the work for you. Whereas in my mother's generation and her mother's generation, they used their hands. Their long hands and arm were really their body parts, right? So you really can see it. So I can look at. I'm not really a good quilter. Within our group, we have people like Jan Holland Sullivan, who's an excellent quilter. We have people like Freedy Slaughter Walker, is an excellent quilter. Lillian LeBlanc is a master at hand quilting. Most of her quilts are done by hand. So it takes her months to create a quilt. We have people within our group who are wearable artists. We have a person, her work is behind you, Gloria Grandi, who does
soft sculptures.
Right, she makes wonderful dolls. They're just, they look like they're talking to you. So we have people who are masters at their trade. What I enjoy doing is doing the research and learning the history. And I can quilt, but my quilting cannot touch theirs because my stitches tend to be very large, because I learned from my mother. And our ancestors, they actually used their hands to create the quilt as opposed to sewing machines. I actually have my mother's old sewing machine that's still inside the wooden case. You guys remember that?
I know that.
Okay, so I still have my mother.
Another thing.
That's what I was going to ask you, too. I was going to ask you if you had any hand, quilts that have been passed on to you.
Matter of fact, in 1981, when I got married, my husband's aunt made us a wedding quilt. So I have some of my mother's old quilts and everything. So so what we're trying to do is pass the tradition along to the next generation and make the community aware that there is a group in Sacramento. Before we form, everyone had to drive to Oakland to be involved with their group. And out of our group, two other groups have formed. Called Fiber Art Masters. Jan Hollings have formed that group, and then the Folk Art Quilters group. But if it hadn't been for us getting started, who knows?
And it's growing.
Yeah.
And back in the day when they were doing quilts, women used to always get together and have sewing circles.
Sewing circles
and this
or
is the way
quilting
they would communicate. This is how they passed along the news. So about 5 to 6 women get together and do one quilt. But by the time they walked away, they had all the neighborhood dues.
Yes. And that kind of still happens. That's when groups when individuals come together. A matter of fact, the Fiber Art Masters have made a quilt together. The quilt that you see on our postcard is called an opportunity quilt. This is the opportunity quilt. Members each made a little block. And then each block was put together to create the opportunity quilt. So one big piece. So, and then we're going to raffle that off. We've been raffling it all year, and then we're going to actually raffle it off on Sunday. Last year, Cordia Wade won the opportunity quilt last year. So I said, Cordy, you can't win it this year because they're going to think it's rigged. So come and see the beautiful quilts. They're beautiful. You won't believe that this was done with people's hands, and it's just gorgeous and everything. And then before I leave, I just want to give a shout out to 2 other events. You guys know the Black Book Fair is coming up in June. It's coming soon. Right. Yeah. It's going to be June 3rd through the 5th right here in Historic Oak Park. But as we lead up to that, there's some events coming up. So what we've been doing this year is promoting reading and community read-in. So there's going to be a community read-in right here at the Underground Books on Saturday, March 26th from 11 to 12:30. So if you have children between the ages of 2 and 13 and you would like to get them involved in a community read-in, we're going to be reading the wonderful book by a local children's author, Imani's Moon. It is a wonderful book and everything. And then finally, to close out, we're always trying to promote literacy and writing in the community. There's a wonderful intergenerational writing conference that comes up that I participate in every year. It's called Our Life Stories, and it tries to bring is cross-generational. And they're having their conference is going to be Saturday, April 23rd at Consumnes River College in South Sacramento. So check us out on Facebook. Support these different events. It's one way of keeping literacy and the arts in our community. And glad to be here.
All right.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Let's give a round.
Thank you. Thank you.